It's time for another Brother Buckeye broadcast with your brother Buckeye, Doug Daniels. Thanks for being with me today. This is the 11th day of August, 2023, just a few weeks away from the beginning of the 2023 season when Ohio State opens at Bloomington for hopefully a national championship run. So it was an open practice today. There were several of the beat reporters on site. I saw what Letterman Rowe had to say, what the podcast had to say, and what the Cleveland.com guys had to say. I hadn't checked out what Buckeye Huddle had to say yet, but the consensus was this was a vanilla practice, low energy. Some were more concerned than others. Two of the three thought this was more of a purposely dumbed down practice for the Big Ten network guys. I'm not sure why they would do that. Others had the idea that this was more of a dress rehearsal, so not to be too concerned. But if you were watching the podcast, it was like watching the post-game analysis of the Northwestern game. It was that much of a bummer. Most of the reporters are in the McCord camp. A couple of holdouts, Tim May and Birmingham, seem to like Brown a little bit more overall so far, but they are in the minority. Everyone seems to be high on Lincoln and Keyholtz as far as the future goes, and that future might be 1 year from now. Injuries, whether they're minor or major, these folks were not seen or not seen much of, at least on the practice field. Mayan Williams, I don't want to hear that. Royer had tied in. Again, he's had a history of injuries. Michael Hall got dinged but got back out there, and he was an animal, hard to block. So everything looks good as far as Michael Hall being a starting interior defensive lineman. And Tylik Williams seems to be injured again and seems to be losing ground. We'll tell you who he's losing ground to, according to the observers, in just a bit. First team offensive line looked good, and that first team offensive line has Jimmy, used to be Josh Simmons at left tackle, Donovan Jackson at left guard, Hensman at center, Matt Jones at right guard, and Fryer has moved from left tackle to right tackle. That could be your starting offensive line. Second team is Tegra at left tackle. Now, this guy's, this is a relatively new player, and he's already looking to be the left tackle, second team. Now, if Simmons went out, would they move Fryer back over to left tackle? I get that could happen. But right now, a young buck, Tegra, is at left tackle. Another young buck, Austin Sverivold, is at left guard. Vic Cutler, the transfer from Louisiana Monroe, is at center, replacing James, which is somewhat surprising. But, Ryan Day hinted at that a couple of days ago. Enoch is at right guard, and Luke Montgomery, another young buck, as right tackle. So some of these other folks that we'll be getting to later when we talk about the overall depth chart have been passed up, so far anyway. And by the way, some of those other guys are third and fourth string. Guys include Toby Wilson. I thought he would have gone to Tulsa to play for his dad. Is he still on the team? Joshua Padilla, Zen Mikulski, who we thought would be in the 2D, possibly a starting right tackle. He is running third team right now. George Fitzpatrick, again, he's one of those guys that showed a lot of promise, but is being recruited over at this particular time. Let's see. Trey LaRue, who actually played some second team right guard last year, would be running with the third team right now. And that's either good or bad. I think it's not such a bad thing if Trey was a second team right guard and now he's third team. That means these new guys that they're bringing in are pushing the older guys out. Of course, then you could complain about the fact that some of these guys were recruited in the first place, but bridge over troubled water. That's where we're way past that stuff. All righty. And Miles Walker, of course, is a true freshman. So there's about 15 guys now on the offensive line. There are literally a first, second, and third team, which is pretty good. Running back room still features Williams, although he was injured today. followed by Henderson or vice versa. Trainum, Hayden Pryor. Xavier Johnson sometimes plays behind the line of scrimmage. When he's not doing that, he's providing some really nice depth at wide receiver. So that's what's happening there. Even some of these walk-on cats like Caffey and Hartson would be second or third teamers, maybe even a spot starter at some of the other Big Ten programs. And they would be starters at the MAC programs. Nice to have them in the fold with the Buckeyes. Tight end Stover Royer, but he was out today. Scott, Christian, Hart, and Thurman. Sam Hart's still on the team, isn't he? I think he is. And they like what they see from Thurman. That's been the consensus so far. So no problems at any of these offensive positions. Wide receivers, Marvin Harrison, Igbuka, Fleming, Xavier Johnson, Ballard, Tates, could be the fourth guy and might even get some first string snaps, especially if they go four wide when the season starts. Noah Rogers is impressing, making incredible catches in practice. Ennis, of course, was the 5-star in the 2023 freshman class. And there's the other Rogers and a couple of more. But again, the wide receiver group is fantastic. First team defensive line. JT, my call. Here's the surprise. Tywone Malone, the transfer from Ole Miss, is in there with Hall at times, which is why Tyleik Williams might be second team with his injuries and just being passed up by a guy who's apparently pretty hungry. Other folks in the mix at defensive line, Jack Sawyer, of course. Those are your starters. Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson are the next group at defensive end. Ty Hamilton, Williams, and there are a couple of more we'll talk about as we kind of circle back around here. I mentioned that Rogers and Tate are impressing. The guys at the podcast aren't thrilled with the groups, the four groups practicing. It gives the younger groups, the third and fourth team folks, more reps. But Austin Ward in particular doesn't like it. Tim May feels just the opposite from Leonard Monroe. He likes the groups being broken up into four. So who do you like more, May or Ward? I'm not telling. I'm not telling. And you know, it's an experiment, and we'll see what happens when the season starts. Whether it was a smart thing to have these. The program, the team, broken up in four groups instead of having good versus good, next best versus next best. Arvo Reese, linebacker from Glenville, has been moved to defensive end, where he probably was better suited because he's kind of long and lanky, but he brings the wood for sure. That move was done because Omari Abor, the defensive end, is hurt and will probably not play, if at all, until mid-season. The observers liked what they saw from the corners. Burke Hancock and Igbinosa are probably your first three. Then you have Lorenzo Stiles. They like what they're seeing from Brown and Calvin Simpson Hunt. Didn't hear much about Turner or Matthews yet, but Matthews is, again, a true freshman. Turner's been around for a while, and not much talk about Ryan Turner. Again, Tua Moaloau. I knew I was going to do that. Tua Moaloau. Sawyer, Curry, Jackson are impressing at DN. So is Melton, by the way. Let's not forget about Mitchell Melton. Still early to say much about Joshua Mickens, the true frosh defensive end from Indiana. And again, we mentioned the interior line. Hall, Malone impressing. Haven't heard much about Hamilton or McKenzie yet, but we know Ty is a favorite of Larry Johnson's. Really haven't heard much about Canoe. And we mentioned that Williams seems to be slipping back which is a shame because he's got such great potential. And Will Smith and Caden McDonald, again, too early to tell there. Linebackers are Eichenberg and Chambers, Cody Simon too. CJ Hicks, that's a nice foursome right there. Hicks is also getting looks at the jack position. Court Williams has been moved from linebacker to safety, from safety to linebacker, where he is a better fit. Reed Carrico and Gabe Powers are next. Haven't heard much about them. Nigel Glover just got to camp. And the safeties are Ranson, Sonny Styles, and Carter, your starters. Remember, this is a safety-driven defense. Second team, Martinez, Proctor, Stokes, Hawkins, Hartford, that is getting a lot of rave reviews as a true freshman. I think that's it. I think that's everything. It'll be interesting what the Buckeye Huddle guys say. But again, the consensus is it was a bit of a lethargic, unenergized practice. Whether that was done on purpose or not, I guess time will tell. I wouldn't worry about it too much because up until today, those who had observed practices and talked to the players, everybody seems pretty stoked about the season. Alrighty, that's your update for the 11th of August, 2023. This is the Brother Buckeye broadcast. I am Doug Daniels Holzmeyer. Please, if you would like, subscribe. This is a fan's point of view. And what I'll be doing is I'll be watching some of the reports that the other guys do and giving the different views. Because if you're a fan of one and they're all up and crazy and giving double thumbs up, but there are two or three other reporting teams that don't feel that way, you can hear it from me. I'll tell you that there are mixed reviews. I won't be a sunshine pumper. And I think that's good. I think it's good to get diverse views. Again, I really love 24/7 Bucknuts and 11 Warriors. In fact, I don't know if he's officially a brother-in-law, but Johnny Gittner from 11 Warriors is married to my niece, Courtney. So I'm not sure what that makes him. I know it's not a brother-in-law, but it's something because his child, it would be a great niece of mine. So anyway, love all the different platforms except for maybe one. There's one I'm not real thrilled about. But Buckeye Huddle, love those guys. Love the Letterman Row. Love the podcast. And so hopefully you'll come here from time to time and see what one fan thinks about what they're saying about the program. And if I have an original view, which I will do from time to time, especially once we get into the season and we see the games, then I'll express lots of opinions when we actually see the games and we do the recaps. One other note, we're expecting a commitment from McClellan, the wide receiver, a 5-star wide receiver this weekend. And then at the end of August, most of the pundits are saying Edric Houston, a 5-star defensive end, should be in too. So those are the next two that should be in by the end of August. Ohio State has the second best class in the country. We probably will never catch Georgia, but staying number 2 would be pretty cool. Also, there is some chatter about Ohio State going back to getting possibly Reggie Powers and the couple of guys that they passed on from the state of Ohio that they may revisit if they don't find a suitable replacement for KJ Bolden, which they had hoped to have in the class. So that's today's report. Make it a fantastic day. Go Bucks. Subscribe, like, comment below, and we'll see you tomorrow. Now, what I've got to do, I got to put my notes below so I can look at the camera when I officially say good night.